Al Franken is now been pulled into this, and it's a nasty one. In December 2006, I embarked on my 9th USO tour to entertain the troops, my 8th to the Middle East since the 9/11 attacks. My father served in Vietnam. My then boyfriend, now husband Chris, is a pilot in the Air Force, so bringing a little piece of home to servicemen stationed far away for their families was both my passion and my privilege. On the trip, country music artists Daryl Worley, Mark Willis, Kenny Thomas, and some cheerleaders from the Dallas Cowboys. The headliner was comedian and now Senator Al Franken. Now, this is written by an anchor on KABC, and she's beautiful. She's
a former model, I believe, yeah.
Okay, as a TV host and sports broadcaster, as well as a model familiar to the audience from the covers of FHM, Maxim, and Playboy, I was expecting to MC and introduce the acts, but Franken said he had written a part for me that he thought would be funny, and I agreed to play along. When I saw the script, Franken had written a moment when his character comes at me for a kiss. I suspected what he was after, but I could figure I could turn my head at the last minute or put my hand over his mouth to get more laughs from the crowd. On the day of the show, Franken and I were alone backstage going over our lines one last time, and he said, "We need to rehearse the kiss." I laughed and ignored him. Then he said it again. I said, "Relax, Al, this isn't SNL. We don't need to rehearse the kiss." He continued to insist, and I was beginning to get uncomfortable. He repeated that actors really need to rehearse everything and that we must practice the kiss. I said, okay, so he would stop badgering me. We did the line leading up to the kiss, and he came at me, put his hand in the back of my head, mashed his lips against mine, and aggressively stuck his tongue in my mouth. I immediately pushed him away with both of my hands against his chest and told him if he ever did that to me again, I wouldn't be so nice about it next time. I walked away. All I could think about was getting to the bathroom as fast as possible to rinse the taste of him out of my mouth. I felt disgusted and violated. Not long after, I performed the skit as written, carefully turning my head so he couldn't kiss me on the lips. No one saw what happened backstage, so I didn't tell the Sergeant Major of the Army, who was the sponsor of the tour. I didn't tell the USO rep what had happened, because at the time I didn't want to cause any trouble. We were in the middle of a war zone. It was the first show of our holiday tour. I was professional and I could take care of myself. I told a few others on the tour what Franken had done, and they knew how I felt about it. I tried to let it go, but I was angry. Other than the dialogue on stage, I never had a voluntary conversation with Al Franken again. I avoided him as much as possible and made sure I was never alone with him. Franken repaid me with petty insults, drawing little devil horns on at least one of the headshots I was autographing for the troops. But he didn't stop there. The tour wrapped up, and on Christmas Eve, we began the 36-hour trip home to L.A. After 2 weeks of grueling travel and performing, I was exhausted. When our C-17 cargo plane took off from Afghanistan, I immediately fell asleep, even though I was still wearing my flak vest and Kevlar helmet. It wasn't until I was back in the U.S. and looking through the CD of photos we were given by the photographer that I saw this one. And there's a picture, Al Franken groping her, putting his hands on her breast. You know, she's wearing a vest, but putting his hands on her vest while she's dead asleep, and he's looking at the camera like, waka waka. I couldn't believe it. He groped me without my consent while I was asleep. I felt violated all over again, embarrassed, belittled, humiliated. How dare anyone try to do that and think it's funny? I told my husband everything that happened and showed him the picture. I wanted to shout my story to the world with a megaphone to anybody who would listen. But even as angry as I was, I worried about the potential backlash and damage that the public might have on damaging my career as a broadcaster. It has begun.